Hey everyone, Lou here. As a primarily Vocaloid YouTuber, I thought I'd have a second here to geek out with my fellow Vocaloid users and talk about the new engine, Vocaloid 5. I recently got the engine, so I'm speaking with beginner experience here with it, but I've been playing around with it for quite a number of hours now, and I think I'm doing pretty good. For new people to the channel, I've got about 4 years of experience with Vocaloid 3 and 4, so I guess I'm halfway able to understand what the hell I'm doing, I guess. Let's start with this review. Roll the intro! Vocals! First, I have to say it was more than generous of Yamaha to provide 4 voice banks with the editor. Normally, they would charge the price they're asking for just for the editor, and then you'd have to go and buy a voice just to use the damn thing. So it was oddly nice of them to provide 4 voice banks with it. Secondly, speaking of the new voice banks, why do they look like they belong in Reboot? I really don't understand what the stylistic choice was here. This isn't 1995 anymore, Yamaha. I'm not saying they need to be hyper waifu and husbando styled anime here, but I think I would have preferred something similar to Cyber Songman or Cyber Diva. I really like their designs, and I think they work pretty well. First, in the 4 new voice banks, Cowdy kinda sounds like Mew, and she really isn't that good to me. Don't get me wrong, she sounds impressive as fuck, and I applaud her voice because she sounds so real, but her tone of voice isn't really my type I like to work with. It's not because she's mature, as Mako's one of my favorite voice banks to work with, but I don't know, her voice just isn't something I'm really into. We have Ken next, who is such a good boy. He's got a wonderfully powerful voice and is capable of a really soft voice as well. I mean, he's got a problem I'll address in just a moment with Chris, but I really enjoy his voice. Not to mention, he sounds the most realistic. When I was mixing him for a future cover, he sounded like a real person. Also, is it me, or does he look like Hajime Isayama, you know, the creator of Attack on Titan? Amy sounds pretty bad. Cyber Diva, although a queen, can be pretty awful if you don't tune her right. I mean, see my first cover with her if y'all don't believe me. When you touch me, I die, just a little inside. I wonder if this could be love, this could be love. Amy seems to suffer from the same problem where it's incredibly easy to make her sound pretty damn terrible. Also, she kind of sounds like a higher pitched Lola, and Lola isn't exactly my favorite Vocaloid, so... Chris is the final one, and he seems the most meh to me. If he didn't look like he was made in 1992, I'd say his design is pretty cool. He looks super chill, and you know, there's not much else I could say other than if he were made a little better, his design is kind of cool. However, his voice is a different one. I've heard some people say he sounds like Yohio, but not at all. Chris doesn't even sound like a man in any way. He sounds like a girl singing in a slightly deeper voice, which is really jarring when you look at his design and how he's the tallest and most masculine looking out of the Vocaloid 5 voice banks so far. Yet he sounds like Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. I'm also kind of tired of male Vocaloids who can only sing in the tenor range, because not every song people write is gonna involve higher vocals. I don't know, I guess I would have preferred a baritone vocal range to really emphasize the difference between a male singer and a female singer for the English category. While Ken can kind of sing high and works best in Fukase's level of range, at least you can tell he's a man when singing. When I hear Chris and Amy singing, I often can't tell them apart, and it really sucks. Doesn't help his voice colors and styles, doesn't do much to help, and just makes the situation worse. So out of like 4 voice banks, there's really only one I'll actually keep using, and that's Ken. Now keep in mind, I have different taste in Vocaloids and vocal ranges than everyone else, so you may like these voices, you may hate all of them, you may only like one of them. This kind of stuff is subjective, you know? Oh, another thing, there's preset vocal tracks, or like kind of sort of preset sounds they make as well, so if you want to just use these voices quickly for your song with some random lyrics, then you can do that. So you can either make something like Sweet Anne's song, which is like the only really good Sweet Anne song, or that one song Joel from Vinesauce made.
We're gonna turn this thing into one big orgy.
New mechanics.
There's quite a few new mechanics to Vocaloid 5 that I was immensely intimidated when I saw the first images. However, once you get the hang of it, it's not too hard. Sometimes I feel like Yamaha took a bunch of notes from Krypton's ideas for the evac feature and made it actually work and not shitty as fuck, you know? Which is good, cause I like the concept of the evac feature, but you know, Luca V4X was a big example of why it fucking sucked. If you don't know what evac is, I highly recommend you look it up because I have a really hard time explaining stuff like that and it's just really complicated. We have a bunch of new effects as well. We have better executed reverb, an equalizer, echoing, chorus echoing, repeating vocals, increasing volume, that one sound effect where it sounds like you're going through a fan, and a few others that I'm not quite sure what they do because I'm still trying to figure that out. One thing, I'm a little surprised there's no snap tune feature, which made using autotune in Vocaloid 4 like stupid easy. So it's a little sad to see that autotune is a little harder to execute in Vocaloid 5. I will say that selecting a voice is now a million times easier as well. Instead of just going through a super long list, if you have a lot of Vocaloids like I do, you can now just click voice, click the language you want to use, and then go down to the vocals of said language you want to use. Then wait a minute for the engine to render the voice into the vocal track you've made, though that might be me, as I'll explain later. Vocal fluctuation is a bit tricky as it requires clicking one of the extra buttons, and like, it's kind of hard to figure out which one does what, you know? However, once you get the hang of it, the attack and release feature is actually now one of my new favorite mechanics for the program. If you've listened to my Vocaloid covers in the past, you know fluctuation is one of my favorite things to do with Vocaloid covers from scratch, as I find it provides a realism to the voice, and plus, I like to make my Vocaloids mimic my own voice when singing, and you know, my own singing voice is probably the best and easiest reference I'm gonna get, you know? And when I'm singing, I find that my voice fluctuates a lot, so... There's also an auto breathing you can do, but I often find the breathing doesn't match the vocals you're using. Like, the female breath sounds too deep, and I'll be using someone like Rin or Una as an example. I kinda wish there was a way to change the breathing pitch so you could try and have the breathing match the vocals you're using. It's really cool though. I mean, Vocaloids always come with breath samples. I know Una comes with a fuck ton. But it's really tedious to go in and manually add the breathing, so I honestly never really use them unless I feel like I didn't do enough for a cover. To have vocals auto-breathe now is a breath off my shoulders, get it? Eh? Although I do feel like the voice color effect doesn't really work, at least the brighter tone stuff doesn't work. I tried to use Power and Soulful on Ken for a cover, and I sort of felt like it added zero color to him. Maybe I'm nuts and can't tell, or maybe V5 is really wonky with that right now, and this kind of stuff will be fixed in future updates. Either way, these new mechanics are super fun to use, and although it makes Vocaloid 5 a lot harder and challenging, it's still a lot of fun to experiment with these new mechanics and see what works and what doesn't.
No returns.
Unfortunately, there are a few mechanics and features that are not returning, which I'm kind of glad about, and others I'm a little sad to see go. You can't install plugins anymore to V5, which kind of sucks when expressive vibrato was my lifeline, but considering a lot of plugins people used are now features in Vocaloid 5, I understand. I think the only sort of plugins that really exist is, of course, using Vocaloid in programs like Cubase. Another thing not returning is the cross-synthesis feature, which I'm sad about cause even though it barely worked, I did like the feature a lot. Then again, I suppose the voice color is taking over that feature, right? At least this means that really stupid idea age Software and Internet Co. had, which allowed you to cross-synth other Vocaloids together, is gone. It was just a lazy idea to give another neglected Vocaloid voice bank a new one, and it sounded pretty awful too. Growl makes a return, sorta. The pitch bends and stuff you do in Vocaloid 4 look like using an Etch-a-Sketch, which kinda sucks, but then again, this kind of stuff is in the engine now. I guess Growl sorta didn't work either, since Vocaloid 4 didn't really have a lot of vocals that could use it properly, you know? I really found myself using Growl on powerful voices like Len or Una most of the time anyway. You can't port Vocaloid 2 voice banks or VSQs anymore, so characters like Tonio, Prima, Big Al, Sweet Anne, Pico, and Sonica can't be used in Vocaloid 5 anymore, and any VSQ you make in Vocaloid 5 cannot be ported supported. You would have to use Vocaloid 4 and then put the VSQ in there and then save it as a VXQX, and then Vocaloid 5 can read it. I mean, this is fine, as I'm sure the V2 vocals would sound absolutely awful with the new mixing and rendering of the V5 engine, but it kinda sucks when your favorite Vocaloid to use is from V2. Though Kayuki is not my favorite Vocaloid to use because I prefer to use innocent songs with her. It does kinda suck that I'm probably gonna need to upgrade her to V4 if I really want to use her in V5. I did notice I had some performance issues involving the engine taking a pretty long time to render in the new effects. Like when I was messing with Ken's voice color, it would take a couple minutes to render, and I actually had V5 crash on me once while I was trying to select Ken on multiple tracks. That, and I think that maybe the layout is a little too dark, but luckily for me my monitor is bright, so like I don't think it's too big of a problem. However, for other screens and stuff, yeah, Vocaloid 5 is definitely way too dark a layout. I think something like a layout customization would be really cool because, you know, we can now select the color of the vocal track, and, you know, considering programs like MMD already allow layout customization, you know, that would be kind of fun. Though I think that Vocaloid 5 is pretty awesome. There's room for improvement, but hopefully it'll be fixed as the years go by. It'll definitely be the biggest improvement the Vocaloid program has taken. Do I recommend to buy this program? Let's talk prices and decide from there. If you do not own Vocaloid 4, the regular version of Vocaloid 5 costs roughly $250, and the premium, which includes Cyberdiva, Cybersongman, VY1, VY2, for around $400. Now, how much does it cost in comparison to Vocaloid 4? Well, the current engine costs around $100, and most voice banks went for around the same price, so it'd be $200 for the engine and the voice bank. While Vocaloid 5 costs $250, you at least get 4 voices, obviously not recommending the $400 one because that's like stupid expensive. However, if you already own Vocaloid 4 like myself and want to get Vocaloid 5 as an upgrade, Vocaloid 5 costs around $150 and the premium costs around $240. So you essentially get 50% off Vocaloid 5 if you already owned the previous engine, which is pretty cool. I do love when Vocaloid companies offer discounts like this if you've already owned the previous version of the voice bank or product, so that's neat. Should you buy Vocaloid 5? I probably wouldn't have got it without the huge discount Yamaha gives to previous Vocaloid owners, so that's just me. However, if you have the cash to spend, definitely get V5. With all this being said, thanks for watching, guys. If you want more videos like this, let me know down below and I'll see if I can do it. See you next time!